Morning, Gamecock fans. JC Shurburtt here with you. Today is Friday, August the 8th, the year of our Lord 2025, and this is Coffee. Probably a shorter episode this morning. Got a little bit of a late start this AM. I had some other stuff I had to take care of before I jumped on and recorded this, but I'm going to give it a go, and we'll see what happens. Certainly appreciate all the listeners out there and viewers on YouTube, I guess, technically. Although most people, I know when I do YouTube, if I'm not doing YouTube shorts, I'm just kind of listening. Nevertheless, thank you. It's been big this month. It's been a lot of interest, and obviously with South Carolina being a top 15 team right now, heading into the season, it's a lot of interest out there with the Gamecocks. So certainly appreciate all of you that tune in each and every day right here on Coffee. The morning show this morning, Hale McGranahan is in kind of a, I don't know, big picture recruiting talk. Hale and Alex Jones were on the road last night seeing some high school football talent. Hale has some notes up on some important targets out there for the Gamecocks on the BigSpur.com for VIP members. You can join by using code the show 50, half off of VIP membership to the BigSpur.com. It's a lot of fun. But he'll be on with JB during the morning show and going to preview this Amari Thomas commitment. His commitment is scheduled for 3 p.m. this afternoon Eastern time. And so we'll have complete coverage on the BigSpur.com shortly thereafter. The Gamecocks look like they're in good shape right now for him. He decommitted from Florida State just a little over a month ago. Visited Carolina officially immediately when that happened. Florida State folks are kind of worried about him. Seriously. So they were not extremely confident that they would hold on to the kid, and ended up he did decommit, and the Gamecocks look like they're on a glide path to getting a commit. You never know. It's recruiting. It could be a shocker, but it would be a shocker if things don't go Carolina's way. So if they get him, either way, there's two major targets left on the board from this kind of summer recruiting wave. Five-star offensive guard, offensive lineman, ultra athlete Darius Gray. I say that because I saw a clip of him playing basketball, and Urban Meyer said that on his podcast one time about looking for offensive linemen that play basketball. He said he didn't take guys that didn't play basketball, and that kind of gets into footwork and agility, and just because to play basketball, you have to have kind of a different skill set. Kind of shows your athleticism and things like that. And I had a coach tell me one time that they had offered a player, and then they watched him play like pickup basketball, and the coach was like, "Well, I could have beaten him," so they dropped him. It's like, wow, that's something else. But that was a defensive back, not an offensive lineman. But O-line wise, it's always very valuable. And Darius is a good basketball player. I mean, goodness gracious, he jumps. I don't know, man. He's a stud. He's a stud. If you kind of follow his recruitment, South Carolina's been on him for a long time. After his visit, I think Carolina, because he took like 8 visits or so. I think Carolina kind of got back in the driver's seat with these types of things. Obviously, nowadays it's more than just, hey, I like you and you like me. Let's get married or date. It's more like, well, there's a prenup we have to do and a business and all that, to use that kind of analogy. So some things had to get worked out, but my understanding is they are. And the Richmond, Virginia 5-star, longtime Gamecock lean. I like where South Carolina's at now. LSU is in the mix, and they still feel good. I don't know that they know what I know, but maybe they do. Maybe they know something I don't. But I think that at the end of the day, I feel great about Carolina's chances. That announcement is in 2 weeks, on the 22nd. And then Caden Ramsey, who, gosh, like I said, I'm really excited about the kid, the 6'4.5". That South Carolina's recruiting him as a tight end from Cross High School down in the Charleston Low Country area, home of Rodriguez Wilson. Big athletic guy. Hale McGranahan went down there and confirmed he did have 13 interceptions last year, which I think is amazing. It's kind of funny. As an aside here, not to get too far off track, in football evaluation, you play football so little of the time. It is definitely a gladiator sport because we spend more time when we evaluate players, looking at things like, that don't even really have anything to do with the task at hand when they get to college. Like Darius Gray, his ability to dunk a basketball shows you a lot about his athleticism, like the raw tools. It says nothing about what kind of player he's going to be in college. It's kind of funny. Like Caden Ramsey, okay, I guess this is closer because it actually happens on a football field, but his 13 interceptions he had last year really doesn't have much to do with is he going to be a good tight end, split tight end guy in the SEC? Maybe he's a receiver, all that. Maybe it has like hands, but you still have to project. There's so much projection in this sport. Whereas, like in baseball these days, what are these guys on these travel ball teams doing? They're playing games, tons of games. Almost basketball and baseball, it's almost to the point where it's not, competition, competitiveness becomes an issue because there's just so many showcase games that the players there's not no pressure. It's like a friend of mine told me one time. You don't ever see somebody lose an AAU championship in basketball in the last second shot. They're not crying on the floor and things like that, like they are in a state championship tournament or an NCAA tournament. Or, I mean, so it's interesting in all the sports. But football, you don't play it that often. You have what high school teams that go to the state, play 15 games. You do have some scrimmages. College plays even less. So it's just not something where you actually play the game a lot. And then when you get older, and that's what's tough about, some people that, play football their whole lives, no matter what level, it gets taken away from you because you can go and play pickup basketball. Mike Morgan plays pickup basketball, my illustrious co-host on JC and Morgan and part of the Chief Sports Network, ESPN. Mike's he's my age. He goes and plays on a basketball team. You can play softball, church league softball, man. Still kind of be a part of baseball, tennis, golf, whatever. Name your sport. Football, it terminates on you. Can't just go out and play. And so it's just interesting to me that we spend a lot of time doing, looking at other things that don't really have much to do with, they're just keys or clue. It's like a clue, right? Here's a clue. But you have to because, I just don't play that much. And then you have different levels of competition. Football, who you're playing obviously matters to some people, not the committee in college of the college football playoff, but it matters to some people. So, he did go down, Hill went down, saw Ramsey. I feel good about South Carolina's positioning. He's gotten more offers, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, which is usually, Georgia Tech, NC State, North Carolina. I don't know about North Carolina or Belichick, but, they come in and try to get South Carolina players that, the Clemson of South Carolina and maybe the rest of the SEC don't necessarily want to take. Sometimes, in the case of Brandon Cisse, they end up being right. The Gamecocks got him back, but so those types of offers, that's good. I think that like Tristan Lewis only had Gardner Webb, so that was kind of a way deep evaluation, if you will. Ramsey's a pretty well recruited prospect. The word's out on him, especially like I said, those ACC teams. I mean, heck, Nick Emanware had only a Virginia Tech offer at the end of the day. But I like Caden Ramsey an awful lot. I would, the more I hear about him, the more I think Carolina will probably get an absolute steal. He's another one of those in-state guys. May take a while. May take a couple of years, but you start thinking about him. You've got Jamel House committed already. They love him. Mike Tyler has shown up at Carolina in camp. The freshman from Hammond, the Gamecocks flipped from LSU down the stretch, and he's been impressive at 6'4", 250. So that tight end room just keeps on trucking. They got some players and have for a while. I mean, this is a program that lost what? every tight end after the 2022 season and just kind of rebuilt it. And even in 2023, Trey Knox and Josh Simon were important parts of that team as far as being able to move the ball. So, and then last year, Simon led them in receptions. You had Michael Smith and Brady Hunt. This year, one of the biggest questions is where are they all going to play? So I can't say enough. And it's even more interesting to me because kind of Steve Spurrier got this going. The Gamecocks had some tight ends under Holtz, Hart Turner, Rod Trafford. You remember Trafford had a big touchdown reception against Alabama back in '01. But when Spurrier got here, they didn't really have many tight ends. And Spurrier didn't really use the tight end a whole lot. They were kind of blockers at Florida. And then Jared Cook came along and he started kind of using, and oh, well, there we go. And you had Justice Cunningham, Pat DeMarco kind of played a hybrid role, right on through to Busta Anderson and Jarrell Adams. So once Cook got it going, Spurrier had a lot of good tight ends. Hayden Hurst was after that. You just keep going and going and going. And boy, they've got ball players at that spot. So and continue to get them. So Caden Ramsey would be a big part of the future there. So that's kind of what's going on in recruiting right now. I believe I read that if the Gamecocks go 3 for 3, that they would probably end up inside the top 17 in the country, which for what would it be then, 17-person class, not too shabby. Not too shabby. Amari Thomas is a 4-star per composite. Darius Gray is a 5. And then Caden Ramsey, I believe, is a 3-star, which, that's cool. Give me all those guys. Give me 13 interceptions by 6'4.5" kid, all you want. But yeah, so, losing some of those recruits in July looked ominous, but, the end of the tunnel, see light at the end of the tunnel, whatever. It's going to be a really good class. Also, 24/7 Sports put out, and look, this is not, I think it's a pretty meaningless thing. Just because, the whole notion of 5 stars is good. There's so few of them. If you have, 6, 7 5 stars on your roster, 30% of them or so are not that great in college. They're just merely good or not very good. That kind of thing. So it doesn't always lead to winning, but what it does do is show you you're recruiting pretty well and you've got players that have a good chance. Now, South Carolina's 5-star players are all pretty good, and Lenore Sellers is not amongst them. So, but they rank the SEC as far as, 5-star. How many 5 stars do you have on the roster? Of course, Georgia and Texas were way up there. And then after that, tied for 4th. I'm sorry. Georgia, Texas, Alabama were up there. Tied for 4th, I believe, or 5th. I don't have it in front of me, but the Gamecocks were tied with LSU and Tennessee, and Texas A&M are in that range. That's interesting because South Carolina has, 4 former 5-star prospects. Dylan Stewart, Nick Harbor, Gabriel Brownlow Dindy, and Josiah Thompson, all on the roster as 5-star players. So that's more than Carolina's ever had. I mean, the actual 5s that have been through Clowney, Lattimore, and I don't know. I mean, Chris Culliver was a 5-star by One Network back in the day. So Jordan Birch was a 5. Zach Pickens was a 5. So it's pretty doggone good, I think. Would you stack those up with the other? I mean, South Carolina's upper third of the league in the best, most talent-laden league in college football. So pretty good recruiting chops that the Gamecocks have there. And out of the 4, because all those guys I mentioned previously were in-state players, there's only one. Stewart's from D.C., Harbor's from D.C., and then Brownlow Dindy's from Lakeland, Florida. Of course, is a transfer portal guy. So 5-star dudes. I mean, Aaron Olin was a 5-star by certain services, I believe, at least for a while. Who else was in the mix? Sean Murphy may have been in the mix for 5 stars. But, highly ranked players, gives you an opportunity to fill some holes with some, players that were talented enough coming out of high school to earn that. I'll put it that way. Because, your five stars, yeah, half of them aren't really the top guys. There's a ton of like high four stars and low four stars and three stars that end up being kind of in that top 32 range. The draft tells us that at the end of the day. But that's a good sign for the roster, for the blue chip ratio, all that. Darius Gray joins the party. I believe all four of those players have eligibility left. I mean, who knows if Nick Harbor has a great year, which would be great for South Carolina and goes pro. But and that doesn't even include Lenore Sellers. So how about that? Kind of crazy, huh? So yeah. So the Gamecocks. When I read the article today on the Big Spur, one of the posters, kind of funny. He said, I was opening that article expected to be kind of disappointed, but I wasn't. And that's true. The blue chip ratio, all that's improved. And Darius Gray would be yet another out of state five star, which, for whatever reason didn't happen. I never thought that was like the key to South Carolina winning big, but I think it does show you South Carolina can win big recruiting battles. And the more big recruiting battles you win, the more chance you have to win. So that's good. So the SEC, you have to run the football. First scrimmage is tomorrow at 6:33 p.m. Stay tuned to thebigspur.com for any notes we get. There's media availability this morning and Sunday as well. So the first scrimmage, you always want the defense to be ahead of the offense. That's, how it was in spring. Like I've said before, good rule of thumb, hope the offense is kind of a dumpster fire operationally because the defense is just coming after them. Because the only two times I ever heard of the offense going up and down the field and the defense in the first scrimmage were 2014 and 2020. Think about those defenses. Not good. And it was that way under Spurrier, Holtz, Muschamp, Elliott. Elliott and Bobo didn't have, I guess, first scrimmages. It's the way it is in the spring. It's the way it is in the fall. It's just how it is. You want that. You want a normal first scrimmage. You don't want injuries, obviously. There'll be some bumps and bruises here and there, but you just don't want that. You don't want that. So it's Saturday. They're going to continue to battle at the different positions. Pat DeMarco, you can listen to his interview here on the Chief Sports South Carolina YouTube channel. Please like, subscribe, and share. He went to practice, and his direct quote was, they're like an NFL team, size-wise. And had some complimentary things to say. Remember, Pat was around the program and at practice every day, Beamer's first couple of years, I think. And, so he's got that daily knowledge and comparison of how they look. And it's eyeball test only. You have to go play, but you kind of start thinking about it, and that's a good sign. When you have players that look like they can go to battle in the Southeastern Conference, that's a positive thing. Obviously, like I said, eyeball test isn't everything, but I think that's an encouraging sign. And they are bigger. They are a bigger team this year, especially, he said the lines of scrimmage, he said both of them. And if you think about it, it's true. And so that size kind of feeds us into the running of the ball type of topic here. What in the world am I talking about? The running the ball topic in the Southeastern Conference. You need to, most offenses, no matter what they are, unless it was Mike Leach, I'll give them that. They want to run the football. They want to try to establish the run one way or the other. It's maybe creatively at times, but different teams try different things. But when you can run the football and stop the run, this game continues as complex as it gets off the field and as complex as it looks sometimes on the field. These days, college football in general, is still about, can you run the ball? Can you stop the run? That's the bottom line, man. And so the question this year is, can South Carolina do that? And, we don't really know because we don't know about the matchups and who's going to be good. I mean, you've got Carolina, around the SEC, I have noticed this. There's not, outside of the top names, there's not a bunch of running backs out there that you go, oh, got to stop that guy. I mean, I love Jaden Ball from Florida. Everybody will remember Logan Diggs, who was at Notre Dame. I mean, he's at Ole Miss. I think he may be healthy this year. So he'll be Le'Veon Moss, obviously from A&M, good. Texas has good backs. Georgia people are high on Nate Frazier. Not a lot of proven running backs though around the Southeastern Conference, and some folks think Florida and A&M think they have the two best offensive lines in the league, and that matters. Running quarterbacks matter. Lenore Sellers, Diego Pavia, Marcel Reed, Arch Manning, Gunnar Stockton. Those guys are going to run. DJ Lagway can move a little bit. So we'll kind of see how the run games evolve. And then run defense obviously is a specialty in this conference. You see sometimes teams get their tail handed to them. They have like really awful rushing statistics. Carolina's had some games around here since whenever, where the run statistics just are 40 yards rushing, something like that. And a lot of that comes down to the line of scrimmage. So I think there's positives, potential positives that could lead to a successful run game season. On offense, we'll start with offense, Mike Shula's attack. And then we'll go to defense. And then there's some, I don't want to say, negatives, but potential concerns. Potential concerns. The first thing is kind of backing up what Pat said. Offensive line's much bigger, especially in the interior. And then you've heard 3 or 4 times about Josiah Thompson. Matt Anderson on the late night Gamecock show said he had heard that, Josiah listed at 300 pounds last year. These guys, when they do their height and weight before camp, it's hot. Obviously, it's hot all over the country, and you're out there working out. A lot of you can lose weight pretty quick with that. Matt said he thought, he had heard he played around 265, 270 last year. That's light. But Shane Beamer, everybody else has said he's up over 310. He's much bigger. That has to be very encouraging, I think, over at left tackle. And then right tackle, Casey Henry, Tree, whoever plays over there. But inside, whoever wins those guard spots, 325, 338, 340, 333, and Trevon Ball, I think, will be one of the starters. And he's still like 330, but he's reshaped, added muscle, moves a little better. So, that's Boaz Stanley is what, 20 pounds heavier than Vershawn Lee was. So 22 pounds heavier if Ball is the right guard and replaces Simpkins. Kamar Bell is 6'2", 310. Whoever's over there, 340-pound Nick Sharp, 338-pound Tree, 326-pound Marquis Anderson, 330-pound Shed Surratt. Whoever's over there is going to be a big dude. And bigger's not always better, like I've said, but that helps. I think that helps in the run game, particularly when you talk about Mike Shula and kind of what he likes to do in the run game. He used a lead blocker in the bowl. We've talked about that. But a lot more power runs, that kind of thing. It's not going to mean they're not going to use like inside zone and things like that, but like he kind of likes to establish it between the tackles. Is that realistic in the SEC? You hope so. If you can get your big bodied guys out and blocking and things like that, you hope so. So, yeah, that's a positive. I think that girth on the inside will help. And, just about all these guys also are good athletes, to be that size. It's not like they're out there and just kind of blubbery and slothing around. These guys all coming out of high school at least, and since they've been at Carolina, very athletic dudes at that size. So that's a potential positive. Lenore Sellers, obviously, in the run game is a positive. I think teams, based on a chat I had with a coach that's connected with another program, his speculation was there's going to be a lot of teams that look at that Illinois tape from the Citrus Bowl and maybe try to do the same Maybe like Ole Miss. Ole Miss got pressure still, though. I mean, it's not like they dropped everybody. Yeah, Kentucky did the similar though. They were fine there, but that's um, that's probably how he's going to be attacked. Now, the interesting thing about the Illinois game is I don't know that the Illini necessarily like keyed on him. I just don't think he ever got going in the run game. It was I don't know. I don't know what the deal was because there's grass in front of him that if he hit the next gear, I mean, he probably could have gained a lot of yards. But and anytime you drop into coverage like that and kind of flood the zone, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what went wrong there. I don't necessarily know that their game plan. I think their game plan was, kind of flood the back end and maybe make sure you keep him in front of you. That kind of almost like a basketball defense or something when they pack it in. I'm not sure, but I didn't necessarily think they bottled him up. I just don't think he ran that much. He kind of took the short passes and things like that. But they're better equipped in the passing game to make teams pay if they do try to do that. But he's obviously a talented runner. Most coaches that coach quarterbacks in offense are going to want their quarterbacks to go through the progression. I mean, if he wants to play in the NFL, he's going to have to. And with more weapons and options and things like that as he grows in the offense, like what Mike Shula said, I want him to run because he wants to, not because he has to. And that's true. That means, he's just picking the best option because he's aware of all of it. And you don't have guys wide open that you miss because a lot of that depends on protection. But that's pass game, and this is a run game conversation. So there we go. And also, I'll say this: that's a kind of a potential positive on offense. Running the ball as the tight ends are blocking. They've taken it to the next level. Brady Hunt got a lot better last year, and he's taken that part of it to the next level. Deshaun Elliott said, with Michael Smith, if you want to line up and run power 20 times in a row, you can, because he's going to get out there and battle. We know Maurice Brown could block. He'll probably play some fullback. And, Jordan Dingle's got 4 years experience in the SEC. So I think that part of run blocking is important and all that good stuff. So we'll see kind of how it goes. Running back, just like Beamer said the other day, and I continue to say, with Faison, great. Without Faison, they're going to be okay. They need him, but they're going to be okay because you're going to have to block anyway. So I think Carolina, they were fourth in rushing offense in the SEC last year, which was crazy good considering all the lost yardage with sacks. I think they can establish the run this year. I think it'll be a more balanced offense. Some of the concerns, the line has to block. Confusion up front, missed blocks, run stunts, things like that have given this line a lot of problems through the years. Now they're bigger. There's different guys inside, but you still got to go out and do it. And we had an episode about see it or believe it, or believe it or believe it when I see it on the morning show where Bradford and Rob Williams were talking about the offensive line, and Jamie said, believe it when I see it. And Rob has a little more faith. I'm kind of believe it when I see it. And I'm not doubting it. I think if you look at the personnel and the room as a whole and how it's evolved, barring massive injuries, which they have depth this year to kind of sustain some, and they'll happen on the offensive line. I don't know who, but it'll happen. I think they've got the ability to be good. I don't think there's any excuse why they won't be better. Now, I always say, and I think this is true, it's never going to be perfect in this league. You're going to get beat sometimes because you got really good defensive lines you face. But should they be getting a push? Yeah. Should they be able to run the ball against several teams on their schedule? Yeah, I think so. But they have to go do it. So that's always going to be a question mark is can these guys, move people up front, sustain their blocks, open holes for the backs, protect Sellers to, block for him. Whatever. The other potential negatives, you play in the SEC, the best defensive lines in America. America. It's a war now. There's no Walter Nolan on the schedule this year. Those guys from A&M have graduated. Clemson's got their dudes back at the end. I think Virginia Tech's excited about, and those aren't SEC teams. Obviously, they're ACCs. ACC's got pretty good D lines too. Virginia Tech's excited about theirs. Kentucky got a kid I really like from the portal on the D line. LSU's restocked. I mean, so you're going to face some good defensive lines and good run defenses. That's always job number one. Any ball coach around the SEC will tell you that. And so it's tough. And you're not going to go out and just, run all over everybody in the league. Nobody does. All those five stars at those schools, they're not going to go out there and do it. You can have big games. Carolina, really big running game against A&M, right? When it's your night, but there'll be games where Carolina struggles to run the football, or you'll have to pass to open it up, and that's just a fact of life in the SEC. And then, the proven back thing. Even though Faison's good, assuming he's eligible, still have the faith that he will be. He still hasn't done it in the SEC, right? And Attaway is probably the most experienced guy back there because he played a lot last year. Howell played a little. Fuller played very little. Isaiah Gustav played in the Big 12, and he had some SEC experience at Arkansas. I failed to mention that. But it's not really it's a good room. I think they'll be fine. But it's not really a proven room. But like I said, there's not a lot of proven backs around the SEC. But again, until you do it, you haven't done it. So those are kind of all the potential concerns. Now, defense, I like the size part of it. I think it's harder to move Monkel Goodwin and Cade Brownlow-Dendy than maybe people think. Nick Barrett at 325 pounds. Carolina's bigger, and DeMarco mentioned this, inside on defense. I think that's good. I think, the improved size at linebacker. Once those guys get going, I think they've got the talent to fill the gaps. Having a guy like Jalen Kilgore and DQ Smith back there tackling wise. So just overall, the size of the defense and sort of the talent level certainly helps. And you'd have some hitters back there in the secondary. Judge Collier will knock your head off. Bakari Swain is a good hitter. DQ Smith, Peyton Williams can tackle. I mean, so that all feeds into run defense. Now the concerns. I think that setting the edge, and this includes Dylan Stewart, is important. I think that one of the huge differences in Carolina's defense getting gashed in 2023 and then being pretty salty in 2024 is the ability to set the edge. And then even, Missouri game, they kept running that outside zone. They had a good plan to kind of crease it in there. I don't know what exactly happened in that game, other than they maybe surprised the Gamecocks by going to it, or maybe adjusted a little bit of the blocking scheme to throw Carolina off. But they were very successful with it. So you got to set the edge, man. And that's been an issue. Replacing Nick Eamon-Warray, we've gone through that this week. And then the inexperience. I mean, you're playing Virginia Tech. They have a new offensive coordinator. I've read about some of the players that they've gotten for the portal that they're going to use in different ways, and it's an opener, and Drones can kill you with his legs. And you've got, Fred Johnson, who's starting his first game out there, and Murphy, who's starting his first game as a Carolina Gamecock, and it's in Mercedes-Benz. And, the mental part of it can younger players are inconsistent in that part. And so you can see a world where mistakes cause you to give up yards on the ground. Usually that's what happens. You step the wrong way, get bounced out of a gap. But that also usually happens more frequently when your defensive tackles are getting blocked and you're having to get off blocks and things like that. So, but inexperience is always going to be, especially at linebacker, an issue in the run game. Overall, as we wrap up here, this wasn't Yeah, I don't know. This was this good? I don't know. I to wrap it up here, I do think will Carolina be fourth in rushing offense in the SEC again this year? Maybe. I think a good thing to shoot for is top half in both run defense and run offense to be pretty good. Um, Clayton White's defenses sometimes, they do gamble and sometimes you don't always guess right. And you give up a long run or something like that, especially with the quarterback in this scheme. But, I'm relatively confident that they have the players to not be susceptible to giving up a bunch of rushing yards. I do think they have the players on offense to be able to run the ball and remain balanced. That said, you know, there are scenarios, just like with everything, where they won't. And if they don't, that's not going to, you're going to have a season that's not exactly what everybody wants and hopes around here. But the players are there, I think. Again, barring injury to make things happen. Okay, 3 o'clock this afternoon, Amari Thomas. Check out thebigspur.com. Check out the late night Gamecock show from Wednesday. That was a really good episode by Matt and Alex, and we'll have Matt on today on the show with JC. See, not the best, not on my A game this morning, right? What was I saying? Yeah, Phil and I, the Mad Dog, will have Matt on for 2 hours. Rafael Esparza live from Las Vegas or New Orleans, because he's sometimes in New Orleans, to talk about the latest odds. Hale McGranahan, and then sports talk tonight, and then scrimmage this weekend at 6:33 p.m. And yeah, so that's it. SEC Sunday night on Sunday night, right here on the Chief Sports Network with Rob Williams and Craig McMichael. That's been a really good run for that show so far, right here on the Chief Sports Network. Download the Chief Sports app; it's free on the Apple App Store. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. This has been Coffee with JC Shurburtt. I'm out. Have a great weekend and holla.